What if the person you need to forgive the most doesn't live in your past, but in your unconscious? There's a voice inside you. You've heard it your whole life. It tells you when you've done enough or when you haven't. It measures your worth against invisible standards. It whispers that love must be earned, that rest is selfish, that your needs are negotiable. And here's what makes it so haunting. It sounds exactly like care. This voice didn't begin with you. It was inherited, passed down through gestures, silences, and the architecture of affection in your earliest years. Long before you had words for it, you learned what love looked like and what it cost. Jung called this the mother complex. Not your actual mother, necessarily, but the psychic imprint she left behind. The internal mother. The one who still governs from within, shaping how you treat yourself when no one is watching, how you negotiate your boundaries, how much joy you allow yourself before the guilt arrives. And here is the paradox. You cannot heal this wound by hating her. Not the woman who raised you, and not the voice she left inside you. You heal it by becoming conscious of it, by seeing, with compassion and clarity, how deeply you've been shaped, and by choosing, moment by moment, to reshape yourself. This is not about blame. It's about authorship, because somewhere along the way, you stopped writing your own story. You began performing hers, living out her unlived dreams, or avoiding her mistakes so carefully, you became a ghost. You learned to feel her feelings before your own, to soothe her anxiety by silencing your aliveness. And now, even in her absence, the pattern continues. The invisible loyalty remains. But what if you could take the pen back? There is a difference between the mother who raised you and the mother who lives in you. The first is flesh and memory, imperfect, human, shaped by her own wounds and limitations. The second is something else entirely, an archetypal force, a psychic structure that Jung understood as one of the most powerful organizing principles of the human soul. This is the mother complex, and it operates like invisible architecture. It determines which emotions feel safe and which feel forbidden. It decides whether your anger is justified or shameful, whether your sadness deserves comfort or should be hidden away. It shapes the inner climate in which you live, and most people never realize they didn't design it themselves. You see it most clearly in moments of stress. When you fail, when you disappoint someone, when you need help, suddenly, there she is. Not the actual woman, but the internalized voice, the one that says, you should have known better. You're being too sensitive. Stop making everything about you. Or perhaps the opposite. Perhaps your inner mother is so protective, so over-involved, that you've never learned to tolerate discomfort. Every challenge feels like abandonment. Every boundary feels like rejection. You move through life expecting to be saved, then resenting those who cannot save you. Both patterns, the harsh inner critic and the suffocating inner protector, arise from the same source, an unconscious identification with the maternal archetype. You are not living your own life. You are living in reaction to hers, proving something, protecting something, performing loyalty to a script you never agreed to write. Jung understood that the mother archetype is dual in nature. She is the great mother, nurturing, life-giving, the source of all comfort and belonging. But she is also the devouring mother, controlling, engulfing, the force that keeps you small and dependent. And here is the crucial insight. Both live inside you. When you sacrifice your truth to keep the peace, that's the devouring mother speaking. When you abandon your needs to care for others, that's her voice. When you feel guilty for succeeding, for leaving, for choosing yourself, that is the psychic machinery of an unexamined mother complex, still running in the background of your life. And the tragedy is this: you think you're being loyal. You think you're being good. But what you're actually doing is refusing to grow up, because to individuate, to become a conscious, sovereign adult, you must do something that feels like betrayal. You must stop living for her approval, even the approval of the mother in your mind. You must risk her disappointment, her sadness, her fear that you will leave her behind. And that risk? It feels like death, because in the beginning, her love was survival. To lose it meant annihilation. So you learned to contort yourself, to edit your selfhood, to become whatever kept the bond intact. And now, decades later, you still do it. Not because she demands it, but because the pattern has become you. This is the invisible loyalty, the unconscious vow that says, I will not outgrow you. I will not be happier than you were. I will carry your pain so you're not alone. But you cannot heal what you will not see. Let me tell you what happens when the mother complex remains unconscious. You choose partners who need fixing, not because you're generous, but because being needed feels safer than being wanted. Love becomes labor. Intimacy becomes management. And when they finally grow stable, when they no longer require your rescue, you lose interest, or you sabotage, or you find someone new to save. Because the pattern isn't about them. It's about proving, over and over, that you are worthy of love through service and sacrifice. Or perhaps it shows up differently. You find yourself unable to commit. Every relationship feels like entrapment. Every expression of need from your partner triggers a primal urge to flee. Not because you don't love them, but because somewhere deep in your psyche, intimacy still means losing yourself. It means being devoured. So you keep one foot out the door, calling it independence, when really it's just the same old fear, dressed in different language. This is what Jung meant by unconscious identification. You are not relating to the archetype. You are possessed by it. You are living out its script without authorship, without choice. And the cost is your freedom. The mother complex doesn't only shape your relationships. It shapes your relationship with yourself. It's the voice that says, you haven't done enough, even after a 16-hour day. The one that measures your worth by productivity, by how much you give, by how little you need. It's the guilt that arrives the moment you rest, the anxiety that whispers selfish when you say no, the shame that floods your body when you prioritize your own desires. And here's the cruelest part. You think this voice is you. You think it's your conscience, your integrity, your sense of responsibility. But it's not. It's the internalized mother, still telling you that love is conditional, that you must earn your place, that your existence is a debt you can never fully repay. This is the invisible sabotage, the self-imposed ceiling, the way you stop yourself just before success, just before joy, just before fullness. Because somewhere in your unconscious, there's a belief that you don't deserve more than she had, that to thrive where she struggled is to abandon her, to betray the bond. Jung called this participation mystique, the psychological merging where your fate and hers become indistinguishable, where her wounds become your wounds, her fears become your limits, her unlived life becomes your unlived life. And the pattern repeats, not because you're weak, but because it's invisible. Because you've been swimming in these waters so long, you think they're the only waters that exist. You see it in the small moments, the way you apologize for taking up space, the way you over-explain your needs as if they require justification, the way you feel responsible for other people's emotions as if their discomfort is your failure, the way you exhaust yourself trying to be everything to everyone, because being enough was never an option in the original blueprint. This is what it means to live with an unintegrated mother complex. You become a ghost in your own life, a performer of someone else's values, a caretaker of wounds that were never yours to heal. But here is what you must understand. This is not permanent. This is not your destiny. Because the moment you see the pattern, the moment you name it, recognize it, feel the weight of it, you begin the process of separation, not from your actual mother, but from the psychic inheritance that has been running your life. And that is where the real work begins. The work of healing the mother complex is not done by rejecting the mother. It is done by reclaiming her function within yourself. This is what Jung called integration, and it requires something far more difficult than anger or distance. It requires you to become the mother you needed, not for her, for you. Reparenting is not a metaphor. It is a deliberate, daily practice of reconditioning your inner world. It is learning to speak to yourself the way a good mother speaks to a child, with patience, with tenderness, with unconditional regard, not because you've earned it, but because you exist. And here's what makes this so challenging. If you didn't receive that kind of care, you don't have a template. You don't know what healthy self-compassion sounds like. So when you try to comfort yourself, the voice that emerges is still hers, critical, conditional, laced with shame. And you wonder why healing feels impossible. But reparenting is not about perfection. It's about repetition. It's about interrupting the old patterns with new responses, even when they feel foreign, even when they feel false. When the inner critic says you're not doing enough, you pause, you breathe, and you say, gently, I am doing my best, and my best is enough. When the guilt arrives because you said no, because you rested, because you chose yourself, you don't argue with it. You acknowledge it. I see you. I know you are trying to keep me safe, but I don't need protection from my own boundaries. This is the practice, not transcendence, not bypass, but conscious, compassionate dialogue with the parts of you that are still afraid, still loyal, still small. And slowly, something shifts. You begin to notice the moments when you would have abandoned yourself, and you stay. The times you would have silenced your needs, and you speak. The patterns where you would have performed, people-pleased, overfunctioned, and instead, you pause. You choose differently. This is the birth of the inner mother, not the one you inherited, but the one you are becoming. The nurturing presence that doesn't need you to be perfect, that doesn't love you because you're useful, but because you're you. Jung understood that individuation, the process of becoming a whole, conscious self, requires separating from the parental archetypes. But separation does not mean rejection. It means differentiation. It means taking what was valuable and releasing what was toxic. It means honoring the care you received while refusing to carry the wounds. And this is delicate work because it asks you to hold two truths at once. She did the best she could, and it wasn't enough. Both can be true. Both can coexist. And your healing does not depend on resolving that paradox. It depends on your willingness to stop waiting for her, the external mother or the internal one, to give you permission to live fully. So you give it to yourself. You learn to set boundaries, not as walls, but as acts of self-respect. You learn that saying no is not cruelty, it is clarity. You learn that rest is not laziness, it is restoration. You learn that your needs are not burdens, they are the language of your aliveness. And most radically, you learn this: the mother you've been searching for, the one who sees you, holds you, believes in you unconditionally, is not behind you. She is not in your past, waiting to finally show up. She is within you. She is the part of you that chooses, in this moment, to stay present to your own suffering, to meet yourself with kindness instead of criticism, to reparent the wounded child who still believes love must be earned. This is the integration Jung spoke of, not the rejection of the archetype, but its conscious embodiment. You become the mother, not to others, but to yourself. And in doing so, you break the cycle. You stop requiring external validation to feel worthy. You stop abandoning yourself to keep others comfortable. You stop performing loyalty to a pattern that no longer serves you. And you begin to live from a new center, one that is not reactive, but responsive. Not driven by guilt, but by choice. Not haunted by the past, but authored by the present. This is freedom, not from the mother, but from the unconscious identification with her. This is adulthood, not the performance of independence, but the quiet sovereignty of a self that knows its own worth. There comes a moment in every healing journey when you realize no one is coming to save you, not your mother, not the perfect partner, not the therapist, the guru, the friend who finally understands. The rescue you've been waiting for will not arrive from outside. It can only come from within. And that realization, it doesn't feel like relief at first. It feels like grief because you have to mourn the fantasy, the one where she finally sees you, finally apologizes, finally becomes the mother you needed her to be. You have to let that go, not because forgiveness demands it, but because your freedom does. This is what Jung meant by individuation. It is the psychological birth that happens when you stop living in reference to the parental archetypes and begin living in reference to yourself. When your worth is no longer determined by approval or rejection. When your choices are no longer reactions to her expectations, but expressions of your own values. And here is the paradox. You cannot reach this place by hating her. You cannot individuate through resentment, because resentment is still a bond. It is still a way of staying tethered, still letting her live rent-free in your psyche, still giving her power over your peace. True freedom comes not through rejection, but through integration, through seeing her, the actual woman and the internalized archetype, with clear eyes and a compassionate heart. Through understanding that she too was shaped by forces beyond her awareness, that she too carried wounds she never healed, that her limitations were not failures of love, but failures of consciousness. And in that understanding, something releases. Not forgiveness in the way we usually mean it, where you absolve and forget, but a deeper kind of release, one where you stop needing her to be different in order for you to be whole. This is the reclamation of authorship. You take back the pen. You begin writing your own story, not in reaction to hers, not in rebellion against her script, but from a place of sovereign choice. You decide what kind of life you want to live, what kind of love you will accept, what kind of person you will become, and you give yourself permission for things that once felt forbidden. Joy that doesn't need permission, self-worth that doesn't need proof, love that doesn't come at the cost of your dignity, success that doesn't require you to betray your origins, rest that doesn't trigger guilt, boundaries that don't feel like cruelty. These are the fruits of inner work, not the absence of struggle, but the presence of choice, not the elimination of the mother complex, but its conscious integration. You stop being ruled by it, and you start relating to it. You see it, you honor what it was trying to protect, and you gently, firmly choose something new. This is adulthood in the deepest sense, not the accumulation of years, but the embodiment of responsibility, not for her healing, but for yours, not for her happiness, but for your wholeness, not for maintaining the invisible loyalty, but for honoring the visible truth of who you actually are. And when you do this, when you step into the fullness of your own authority, you don't just heal yourself, you heal the lineage. You become the end of the pattern, the place where the inherited wound stops traveling forward, the place where unconscious suffering becomes conscious choice. Your children, if you have them, will not inherit what you have integrated. Your relationships will not replay what you have resolved. Your life will not be a repetition of hers, but an original work, messy, imperfect, undeniably yours. This is the gift of individuation. This is the promise of inner work. Not that the past will disappear, but that it will no longer dictate the future. Not that the mother complex will vanish, but that you will no longer be possessed by it. You will hold it, understand it, learn from it, and then, with great tenderness and great strength, you will set it down. And you will walk forward, not as the child who needed saving, not as the performer who earned love through sacrifice, but as the author of your own becoming, whole, conscious, free. If you've stayed with me until now, something in you recognizes this truth. You know the pattern. You've felt its weight. You've seen how it shapes your choices, your relationships, the quiet ways you betray yourself when no one is watching. And perhaps, for the first time, you're beginning to see that it doesn't have to continue. The work is not easy. It will ask you to sit with discomfort, to face the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, to feel the grief you've been postponing. It will ask you to be gentle when your instinct is to be harsh, to stay when your instinct is to flee, to choose yourself when your conditioning says, that's selfish. But this is the path, not around the wound, but through it. Not by rejecting the mother, but by integrating her. Not by hating the past, but by authoring the future. And you don't have to do it perfectly. You don't have to do it all at once. Healing is not a destination. It's a practice, a daily return to consciousness, a moment-by-moment choice to meet yourself with the compassion you once searched for elsewhere. So here is my invitation. Begin today. Begin small. Notice the voice, the one that tells you you're not enough, that you're too much, that you owe something to everyone except yourself. Notice it, name it, and then, just once, choose a different response. Speak to yourself the way you wish she had spoken to you. Hold yourself the way you needed to be held. Give yourself the permission you've been waiting to receive. And know this, the moment you choose yourself, you are not abandoning her. You are not betraying the bond. You are honoring the deepest truth she could have ever wanted for you. That you would become fully, authentically, unapologetically alive. This is how the pattern ends. Not with blame, not with distance, but with consciousness, with integration, with you, standing in the center of your own life, finally ready to write the story only you can tell. If this resonated with you, I want you to do something. Say it out loud, or write it down, or simply let it settle in your heart. I am the end of the pattern. Say it until you believe it, because you are. This is the work we do here on the Mental Dose channel, exploring the depths of consciousness, the architecture of the psyche, the path toward wholeness. If you want more of this kind of reflection, subscribe. Join this community of seekers who understand that true transformation happens not through avoidance, but through awareness. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone still caught in the invisible loyalty, still performing love at the cost of their selfhood, share this with them, not as advice, but as resonance, as a reminder that they are not alone in this work. The journey continues, and you are exactly where you need to be. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your willingness to see. And thank you for choosing in this moment to begin.